Hi, it's nice to have you with us here today. My name is Brad Etheridge. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for the Center for Tax Strategies and Resources. For those of you not familiar with the Center, we're a membership-based organization. Some folks say we're kind of like a study group on steroids. Folks join our group or apply to our group so that they can have additional resources, training, services, strategies, and things to provide better and more elegant solutions for their clients. Today in the center itself, we've got something coming up here pretty quick. I'm going to tell you about in a few minutes. We have an Academy event, which is an awesome opportunity to meet a lot of the other members as well as the 17 folks we have speaking. It's just an incredible 3 days. It's going to be in Las Vegas, the 11th, 12th, and 13th. So I'll give you a little more information on that in a moment. Today, you're going to hear from one of our faculty members, Curtis Cloak, who is a national expert, author, and award-winning trainer who has put together some amazing information on how to maximize retirement income. I'm quite sure you'll enjoy it. And then about partway through, I'll give you a little bit more information about our upcoming event, a little bit more information about the center itself. So sit back and enjoy, take a few notes, and we'll talk again in a few minutes.
All right. Well, so today I'm gonna kind of bring it down a little bit, Stuffy, but I've got some agenda of items I wanted to talk about. Obviously, with my this kind of come late with you guys, and I had a lot of commitments, and so I prepared while being here in San Diego this presentation. And much of what I'm going to share today will be attempted in a methodical way to show you live in software, because none of this really matters until we see how it actually applies in real life. And the best way I know to do that, though, there's techniques of showing things in live software that is helpful where you get it, and if you do it wrong or you do it too fast, then it's not helpful at all. So we'll try to accommodate today by making sure that we go slow, and then we can answer questions. But I want to focus on framing the power of tax planning and retirement. Obviously, it's my topic and the topic I'm noted for. And I know these topics of estate planning, which we do in our practice, that have been covered so far, far more technical in nature. I want to talk about some of the more simple things we miss. And so this is a story, the subtitle, Story of Traditional Investments Together with Insurance Product Allocation and Alternative Options That We Don't Always Think About. So with that, let's get kind of teed up on what the frame slides are going to be. And it's just a constant reminder that whatever process we have, we must have a process that's repeatable every time. We can't reinvent the wheel each time. We have to understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. Obviously, our first meeting is to create a connection and not just believe that we've connected, but make sure that we know the client has felt heard, because we're trying to sell our services so they hire us for the second meeting, which becomes discovery. And then our back office analytics work on testing all of that based on our expertise. And then we present them compelling pictorial and framing content about where they were going versus where they could be going to show the value of who we are. And so it's a client-driven process that can be live or virtual, either one, that uses not just numbers, but pictorial contrast. And when we can show them and tell them and verify it mathematically, then it becomes quite powerful. And so we're going to talk about our dashboard and how we back them into a corner of knowledge, and how we create that urgency that stops procrastination. What's the cost of delaying this decision to work with you? Because even if I'm 10 years from retirement, there's a significant cost every single month I delay not acting on something. And some months, depending on where interest rates are going and a host of other things, the cost could be dramatic, just a single month of delay. And so we've got to be able to contrast that to create urgency so that they stop this procrastination. So we're going to stand out from our competition with this client-driven process. We're going to be very consultative in our actions and words we say. And we're going to do that by asking. Stuffy's the man about great questions. If I've learned anything from Stuffy over the years, it's the questions. I remember him saying to me one time at a Form 400 meeting that a good law case is won by great discovery and good questions. You can win and lose a case by your questions. Ask the wrong question, you lose. Ask the best question, shut up and let them answer, you win. And then it's to educate in a way that is compelling. And so realizing that we have three basic retirement income strategies to pick from, I want you to be convinced that there's a hybrid of blending these that makes this far more exciting than just these three. But there's the systematic withdrawal income plan, which was used for years, and then the buckets of laddered progressive time segmentation, and the floor. And oftentimes, we as advisors pick, and depending on your bends and biases against products, you may pick one believing you've picked the most efficient strategy when in fact you haven't. And so obviously, because we have software that's so dynamic at so many levels, what we can't deny anymore is the truth about what the math shows. And that is 80% plus more of the time, when I do a hybrid of combining these three things together for my clients, especially my high net worth, it's a much more efficient, powerful strategy than singly picking either or any one of these by themselves as a sole strategy. So don't get confused or don't get convinced that one or the other is better. It's a combo of being able to bring them together for the highest level of efficiency. And this is one of the biggest things that I say to clients, because as an asset manager, not just an insurance practitioner, oftentimes folks out there believe that managing assets is a commodity. It's not. It's not a commodity. And here's my typical answer when my receptionist calls me to the front desk when somebody's just gotten off the elevator on my 6th floor and asked the question, I'm shopping for advisors. I'm not real happy with the one I got. What do you charge to manage assets? I come out and I let them repeat their question. I know what their question is going to be. And here's my response. Well, let me ask you this question. Most financial practitioners are focused on touting their highest average performance. The question is it the gross average performance that matters, or is it the gross average performance net of fee drag, tax drag, and inflation drag? It's the amount you actually get to keep. And what if I told you that in our practice, that in your retirement, 50% of the profits you will experience, and I'm not overstating this at all, will be tax mitigation, fee drag mitigation, and inflation mitigation, all three. So if you're dealing with an advisor that just focuses on touting their best gross performance as compared to their counterparts, and they're completely not focused on mitigation of tax, fees, and inflation, then you're going to get about 50% of the gains that you keep that you're not going to get when advisors are focused on both asset management but net of what you keep. So that's the first thing I want you to know, Mr. Prospective Client. And the second thing I want you to know, based on the way we actually build income, liquidity, and growth, it works out that about 40 to 50% of the assets that we utilize in your portfolio to build that retirement plan have no fee drag whatsoever, no ongoing fee drag at all. Well, that means if I take the totality of your portfolio, if that's true, just to keep math simple, and I'm charging 1% to manage assets, not only are you getting a double benefit of the work that we do, but your composite fee drag ends up being about half of what most advisors are charging. So I want you to know that the way things are done are quite different here than maybe the next 5 folks down the street. Now, they haven't a clue what you just said, but what you said separated you so far from the competition that they're curious. And I will tell you that that response takes them off of their heels or puts them on their heels, either way, in a way that gives me more conversations that continue than those that just kick tires and want to ask that question. So that's kind of where it all starts for us. And because, and this is all about the tax center, that the efficiency of tax becomes one of the most critical elements in all of this. So just a quick reminder, I shared this the last time. I'm teeing up to get to real case studies where we can dig into today's content. But there are 4 tax classes of money. I used to talk about 3, but I'm going to talk about 4 now. And the first one is obviously all the money goes in pre-tax. We know what these assets look like. Everything comes out taxed, and that's all our qualified dollars. And the next bucket is everything goes in after tax, and there's a host of things that can be even more than the list listed here: mutual funds, stocks, bonds, annuities. But boy, there's a whole lot different tax spigots involved. And the one that's always missed is exclusion ratio tax treatment. And what's the power of that? And what's the power of distribution rate over performance rate? Big difference. And so we got to consider there's more to the equation of tax if we're understanding all the different ways taxes can apply than just long-term capital gain, short-term capital gain, ordinary income tax. And of course, things that come out of this spigot, our growth is taxed, except obviously there's some rules around long-term capital gains if your income's below a certain level, et cetera. The third bucket is everything goes in after tax. And there's two basic types of investment allocations that can be true for this asset class. And they, if done properly, can be completely tax-free upon distribution. And then the fourth class, which I've distinguished separately now, is everything goes in pre-tax if done correctly. It grows tax deferred, and if used for the right reasons that the IRS allowed, it's now fully tax-free. And the broader I can blend the portfolio between these classes of assets, either during their working years or in the precursor of the 10 years prior to the retirement, or even if I start figuring out a way to blend with Roth conversions and life insurance purchases at retirement, assuming they're healthy and they're still young enough prior to age 72 and before taking Social Security election. There's a ton I can do to continue to blend their portfolio before actual full retirement to actually blend the assets amongst these classes at some level. And the more of the classes I can blend these assets, the more tax control that I can provide for them. And so again, another reminder slide, not going to spend any time on this, but we have a 3-meeting process. Meeting 1 is just getting to the heart of the matter of the connection. And then it's talking about what keeps them up at night, the 5 top fears, and then educating them once they have felt heard to the 5 risks discussion. And during that meeting, very important to remind everyone that we do not talk about products. The last thing we're going to do is talk about products. Only if something in their own portfolio comes up will we talk about products, and only the products they already have. And meeting 2 is now they've hired us, they're paying our fee if we're licensed to charge those fees, and we now are into discovery, meeting 2. And when we're in discovery, we're not talking about products anymore or at all. And we're not talking about products unless in discovery talking about their products. But again, another meeting where we are not talking about tools. We're listening, we're asking these great questions, and we're getting the intel we need to back them ultimately into a corner of where they were going versus where they could be. And then we get to meeting 3, where we've done all that work, we've done all the testing, we've done it dynamic to Medicare Part B, the IRMA, the MAGI, how much of the provisional income in the Social Security that's taxable, Roth conversion, Social Security delay timing, and not just in the 3rd dimension, but in the 5th dimension. And we're going to do all this heavy lifting. Housing wealth, what's the advantage or disadvantage of even focusing on housing wealth? And we're going to, at the end of the day, contrast a pictorial and mathematical story of the difference between where they were going and the value of the advice that we're able to give. And then we're going to, assuming they want to implement, provide them a step-by-step call to action to implement that. And at the same time, we're going to be able to contrast the cost if they delay even a month away, so that they create urgency and they're acting as quickly as possible. So what's this all about today? It's all about the basket of products approach. And I always love talking about the mechanic, because, you know, if you buy a Cadillac from the Cadillac dealership and you bring your Cadillac car into the service manager 2 years after you bought brand new with a squeaky right wheel, and he takes it back to the bay where the mechanic is working, he sees that beautiful Cadillac. Here's the problem. Imagine if he went to his toolbox and he grabbed his 3 favorite tools. Doesn't even know what's the problem, hasn't taken the wheel off yet, but he's so excited, he runs out in the vestibule where he's drinking coffee and eating a glazed donut, and he starts talking about his 3 favorite tools. Now, he's got 1,000 tools in that Matco snap-on toolbox that's wall to wall to the ceiling, but boy, he's got them three favorite tools. Well, metaphorically, think about it. Isn't that what happens a lot of times in our arena, in the financial services world, where advisors have these 3 or 4 or 5 tools? They don't want to talk about anything else. They don't want to talk about those tools, but they haven't even diagnosed the problem yet. And so I want to suggest that when we consider all of our tools, we need to know what the tools do, how they impact, what are the fact patterns that make the tools together or apart become powerful to answering and solving the problems mathematically for fee drag, tax drag, and inflation drag, and growing their assets, giving them liquidity and a lifetime worth of income they can sleep well at night for, and see them as tools and not as a product exclusively to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because literally there are hundreds of tools in our hands, and until we diagnose like the mechanic would do, we don't even know what the right tools are until we've done the discovery. We've asked all the right questions. So that's one scenario of the mechanic, and it's ridiculous. Mechanics don't do that. Imagine a second scenario. Imagine that a mechanic was really biased to a tool that occasionally he was going to need. And so he does take the time to figure out what tools to get the tire off of the hub. And he gets the hub off and he gets down to the bearing on the spindle and he sees the problem. It's a bearing that's making all the squeaky noise down there. And then he realizes that in order to get the bearing off of that spindle, he needs a bearing puller and ultimately a bearing press so he doesn't damage the spindle, create more cost to repair it than the simple cost and time to replace that bearing. Now, he runs into the vestibule and he asks the couple to come back to his bay. He points out the problem to him. He shows him his Matco snap-on toolbox. He brags about the 1,000 tools in there, and then he proclaims his problem to them. You see, in that toolbox, I have every tool necessary, but there's one tool I don't have. You know, I hate bearing pullers. I hate them with the passion. You know, I can't fix the problem here if I don't have a bearing puller. I'm sorry, you're going to have to take the car somewhere else. I hate bearing pullers. Now, that's ridiculous, too. Obviously, mechanic isn't going to cause himself to not have tools he needs to fix all the jobs that come in the door. But isn't that what some financial practitioners are doing? Is they're singling out products. They're simply tools to help us fix a problem based on what is revealed in our discovery in a way as though they're damaging or that they're bad. See, tools are neither good or bad. The tools provide a solution for whatever the tool was designed to do. The good or bad of a tool is the simple understanding of whether we're applying it to a proper use or an improper use. The tool itself isn't bad. And we must get to the place where we stop being biased to these products, whether it's life insurance or mutual funds or alternative investments or ETFs or annuities. And you know what I'm talking about, Ken Fisher. You know, he singles those products out as a product, that's demonic, and yet he's that mechanic that doesn't have the bearing puller in his snap-on toolbox to fix the job. And you get what I'm saying. And so I just want to encourage us to see things as tools, understand what they do, how they play with fee drag, how they play with tax drag relative to what the specs are, and the different tax classes represented by the client that we're working on helping at that moment. And that's where taxes come in. So we're going to talk today about 2 case studies, and I'll keep it light, but I will answer some samples of these 5 things. Asset allocation by tax class. There's something really simple that we've discovered by having dynamic programming that we didn't know. So even I am learning every day, as I know each of you are. It's why you're on this webinar, is to learn consistently. Number 2 is, what's the value of an annuity guarantee? And is it really about interest rates? Is it more about mortality rates? Is it more about distribution rates? Those are questions. And 3 is, what about Roth conversions? Where do they fit? And when should we really bump the bracket, but when should we absolutely jump the bracket? And those are some fun discussions. And we've had those with this group before. And 4, how about life insurance as an asset class? What's the value of that? Well, that can be powerful if the specs are correct for the right case in the right way. Life insurance could be amazing. And then 5, what about alternative investments? Now, I don't really have a case study specifically to alternative investments, but I'm going to talk about alternative investments. So since I don't have a case study that really samples that the math and science of that, let me just talk about number 5, and then we'll get into 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Well, Curtis, it is a pleasure listening to your expertise in that retirement planning maximization. That's good stuff. Listen, I won't keep you too long here. I want to tell you about something really exciting. We have our Center for Tax Strategies and Resources Live Academy in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's at a great hotel. It's at Westgate. And actually, one other kind of fun thing we don't normally do, but at the end of the first night on the 11th, we have a party outside around a gorgeous pool at a private club across the street from the hotel with a wonderful dinner and drinks and an opportunity to kind of spend some time with the speakers and the other members of the group. So that's May 11th through 13th. So I know it's coming up here pretty quick. We usually run from about 8 o'clock until 5 p.m. Each day. So it's an estimate because sometimes we might run a little over. Days 1 and 2, and then on day 3, which would be the 13th, we run from 8 o'clock in the morning until 4. It is probably one of the only meetings I've ever been to that nobody ever gets up and walks out and makes phone calls during presentations, because there's just so much information that comes out in a real rapid fire basis, and it's really, really engaging. Keep in mind though, the entire program, when we put it together, and the speaker and the agendas are all related to things that will incredibly increase your practice revenue. So that's kind of probably why people don't want to get up and walk out and miss something. To register to attend this, you can go to our website. It's www.yourctsr.com, and there's a tab on there that says upcoming events. The pricing to attend for the entire 3-day program and the dinner is $6.99 for our members, because members always get it cheaper, and $8.99 for our yet-to-be members. Now, we have right now I've got 7 reservations available. I know we're getting close to the date, and that includes discounted hotel room rates, because we've got a nice room block at the hotel. Check your email right after this program, because I'm going to send out a pretty nice offer to the first 4 people that register. So make sure you check your email. You'll enjoy what you read. For more information on the center or on joining our organization, you can give us a call at 877-258-2837. Or if you'd prefer to do it in writing, you can send the email to thecenterteam@yourctsr.com. I want to tell you a little bit about who's going to be speaking at this upcoming event. And these folks just absolutely come in and crush it. Harlan Nicola is a noted author and expert in reverse mortgages. For those of you that don't know a lot about reverse mortgages, they historically had kind of a bad taste, but if you actually understand how they're used and you have the right provider, it can actually free up some pretty good dollars to solve other financial product needs for the client. So he's going to come in and talk about that. Paul Sella is a disability specialist. He has created a package that works so incredibly well with small professional groups, but creates some substantial practice revenue, but an unbelievable disability solution. Walt Dallas is coming in, and he does tax reduction plans. Our members have the opportunity to have any of their clients' 2 years of personal and corporate returns reviewed. And Walt's firm specializes in finding all the things that everybody else missed. The client doesn't pay for this up front. Once they've done their analysis, they come back to the advisor and say, here's what we found and here's what it will cost to fix it. If the advisor says, yeah, let's set up the client meeting, the tax attorney will meet with the client and explain what they found and arrange to get these problems fixed. But it frees up huge dollars in a lot of cases. And those dollars, obviously, as you well know, can be used to solve other financial product needs. We've got Bruce Gibner, who's a tax attorney out of Los Angeles. Definitely one of the smartest tax attorneys I've met in my 38 years in this business. And he's going to come up and talk about some things that most folks just aren't aware of. And then hang around and socialize with us also. So you really like Bruce a lot. Rick J is a dear friend of mine, and he's also a member of the National Center for Employee Ownership. And he is a specialist in employee savings programs. So he's going to talk about ESOPs and how they can create great tax savings for your clients. Kevin Jerry has his Master of Science in Taxation. He's a partner of Tangible Property Tax Methods. There is a approved tax play that's just awesome, where you can actually go back to the time that your client first built the building, as an example, 15 years back. And a lot of the things that they took in depreciation could be in turn converted to current day deductions. Big numbers on that. And by the way, to get certified by the government to do that program, it's a little over 800 hours of certification. And so Kevin's going to talk about how that can help free up some dollars for your clients. Kevin Knebel, LinkedIn's most recommended business speaker. Kevin is an expert in the world's biggest Rolodex, which is LinkedIn. And there's been quite a few of our members and me personally and Simon who signed up for to be a client of his, and he's done some amazing things and really helped to open up that marketing. Scott McHenry is going to come in and talk about qualified and non-qualified plans. He is an expert in all aspects of the programs. I guarantee there'll be some things you just weren't aware of. Don Corte is a long-term care specialist. Personally, in my practice, I never really did much with LTC. I guess I was kind of lazy about it. Once he started to explain and go through how that's an additional sale that solves a problem, a lot of you already know this, I didn't. But Don has some incredible tools to increase your LTC sales. Dr. Vicki Rackner has been with the center since day one. She's a retired surgeon. She's on our advisory board for the Doctors Academy of Economics, which is a group we own. And he also bridges the gap between advisors and doctors. So she can show you how to get into the medical market, more importantly, what to say and where to find the dollars. Darren Sugiyama is a premier premium financing expert, has what we consider to be one of the very best setups and structures and service for that market. So he's going to come in and talk about what he does different than everyone else. And Joe Strazzeri, Joe's out of San Diego. He is the creator of the Southern California Institute, the Laureate Training Program. He is a tax attorney extraordinaire. A lot of our members have already used him to help eliminate capital gains or transition their businesses or make their businesses more valuable before and after the sale. So Joe's going to talk about some of those ideas. That's the kind of things that happen at the Academy, along with the best part, I think, which the evening of the first night, we do what's called a fireside chat. And a lot of the members and a lot of the speakers from that day will come in and the members and guests just throw questions about specific cases they're working on. It's a really fun hour and a half in the evening after dinner. So come see us at the Academy, again, the 11th through the 13th. Check your emails because I'm sending out a pretty nice offer. So I'm going to get you back to Curtis now. We'll see you at the very end, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Alternative investments are something that I have discovered over the last 10 years, something I didn't know much about, scared about, but I chose to get myself very educated. And as a result, about 50% of my portfolio now is engaged in alternative investments. And though I cannot speak to anyone, including you as an advisor, I can speak to you advisor to advisor, but I can't speak to you where I'm giving advice about investments, because these alternatives, when you do that, must be vetted out by your registered investment advisor firm or your broker dealer, and then you got to be careful that you don't sell away. So I'm going to speak about this educationally. I'm going to tell you what I've done so that if that's something you choose to explore, I have organizations that you can go listen to their podcasts and learn more about this sort of thing. But there's additional layers of tax efficiency that can be created when considering alternatives you didn't know existed. And something really magical was a discovery of me getting involved in these three groups. Every single one of them talked about infinite banking and the power of tax-free life insurance. It blew me away. And there's life insurance agents that are speaking at these conferences in these groups. They're selling larger policies, bigger policies, and more volume of policies in alternative investments than I would have ever gathered. In fact, it kind of put me to shame that, we know, and I see a typo there, alternative was not spelled right. It's just amazing how we don't talk enough about the power of these products. So what I have with these alternatives is I have a self-directed IRA account, and I have a self-directed Roth IRA account. And then I'm also using some of my after-tax money. And one of the things that I learned a long time ago was the power of buying structured settlements. Now, there was a time with structured settlements when the rates were high at all, this kind of a rate deal. Obviously, those numbers have come down based on interest rates. Obviously, with rates being lower and as a comparative to the not the alternatives, obviously the buyer of these structured settlements are willing to pay more for them because they don't need as much profit to make them still better given the low interest rate environment. So they're not as good as they once were. And you got to be really careful when considering such animals because there can be a lot of hair on them, so to speak. You can get yourself in trouble. And there are, I'm not going to get into too much detail today, but there are rules that you need to know when you consider them. But let me describe to you one of the structured settlements that I purchased and the power of tax as it related to a self-directed account. When I bought this particular structured settlement in my alternative investment self-directed IRA account, it was a contract that begins in 2025, by the way. My deposit was $78,000. My total payout over the course of time as a period certain payout would be over $638,000 over my lifetime. And that would be paid back to my self-directed account, whether I lived or I died, to my heirs. So I knew exactly what I was putting in. I knew the time frame that was involved. I bought it back in 2010. And I knew exactly what my IRR was going to be, which was north of 7.8%. I locked in a true and pure RII of that type of return. Now, it dawned on me about 6 months after I purchased the structured settlement inside of my self-directed traditional IRA that since there was such a long protracted period of inaccessibility to this, because it was really an investment that you had to look at like any other investment, the likelihood that it had a discounted value for purposes of tax if converting such an animal to Roth IRA must exist. So I seeked out an expert evaluator on such assets inside my traditional IRA, and I was absolutely correct. You see, I had nearly an 8% IRR on this account. But so that meant that my 78 would have been worth about 8% more a year later. But when I had an evaluator look at it, he discounted it a year later down to $68,000 for purposes of tax. And that was certified by my self-directed IRA. And I converted the entire account to Roth, paying taxes on 68,000 for something that was worth nearly 90 in present value at that time. Remembering that I put in $78,000 and I was assured to get $638,000 over my lifetime. So that made it an amazing Roth conversion for me. And I could get over the cost of the tax pretty darn easily. And so that became my Roth IRA self-directed account. And I'd never considered it. My evolution of understanding happened only as I continued to engage in that activity. So there's one example. The second example is I've discovered that not only can you buy real estate and not only can you buy what we would normally think of as alternative investments, I discovered something called ATM contracts. And it is what you think it is. ATM contracts are basically ATM machines that are placed in strategic locations in a variety of cities around the country. And there's a special protocol of how they do that. They're all serviced by third parties, and you can buy into them. And let me tell you, I've bought into a few of these, and there's two groups that we use, and these groups have 15 years of history of doing these, and they're all generating their profits based on the fees they're being charged by these ATM machines, and it's better than you can imagine. The deal for me is a $104,000 deposit. It's the way it's always been. I've been doing them for probably 5-6 years now. $104,000 deposit, and they pay for 7 years, $2,180 a month for 7 years. It's kind of like annuitizing money because you're getting a bit of principal and getting a bit of gain over a 7-year period of time, except that if they're in a traditional IRA, self-directed IRA, or if they're in a traditional self-directed Roth IRA, it's just like a mutual fund paying a dividend. So there's no taxable distribution of those payments. They're just deposited into the cash of the self-directed account. And as I get more money enough to buy and deploy other investments in my alternative bucket, if I want more alternative investments, or if I want a IRA transfer from my self-directed back to my traditional IRA account to do more traditional investments, I can pivot back and forth between them as I wish and as I desire, as my needs would be apparent. And so, by the way, those are generating right now about a 21% real return with about a 10% depreciation factor, because there's a depreciation of the raw assets that generates in the right tax bracket about a 31% IRR. By the way, 15 years they've never failed to make a payment. And when last audited, there was about a 28% cushion of the current fees that are being collected that would allow fees to drop 28% and they could still make their commitments. Is there some risk involved? Absolutely. But boy, that has been an amazing alternative for me in my traditional IRA. Now I lose the tax benefits of the depreciation when I use my traditional IRA, but I do some of this with my after-tax money, which gives me the full benefit of that depreciation as well. So if you've never heard of those, and by the way, we could go on a long time with these alternatives. I'm buying triple net leases with Kroger food stores and Aldi food stores in very amazing locations, and they're generating a lower return of cap rates around 8-9%. But we're not stuck just with traditional investing. We can broaden our horizons to see what else is out there. So that's just a discussion. I really have no demonstration of that other than to describe them to you and say I've learned about them myself just by getting involved and listening and educating myself. So with that, by the way, if I could just open this up before I get into the detail of real cases, maybe someone has a question we can cover right here before I move on, or not.
Yeah, Curtis, we had a question come in. Hold on just a second. If you combined the discounted Roth conversion with an investment natural gas where you get an 80% discount, you do the Roth conversion with no tax. Hold on, it's broke up a bit. Hold on.
Actually, I understand the question, Brad.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, another alternative investment in the gas and oil sector does exist. I didn't want to take the time to go there, but I'll go there for a minute. And yes, can you arbitrage that? Absolutely, if you've got the right type of tax situation. Under the alternatives with the two groups that I really like working with, the risk of oil and gas is the price of a barrel. I mean, it's ebbs and flows, and there's wonderful times, there's terrible times. But one of the alternative investments that is really quite amazing on the oil and gas sector, which by the way becomes 100% deductible in the right tax environment, which could arbitrage some tax savings for an offset of Roth conversions in the same tax year, is a company that has figured out how to take refuse and turn it into byproducts that are bottled up, like certain types of oils and lubricants, where they go out and they get a contract, like you would sell a contract of corn or a contract of oats or a contract of orange on the futures, where you absolutely got a guaranteed sale. You know what your profits are going to be. You just have to produce and deliver the product on time. So, but it's gas and oil products, which means you get that depreciation or that deductibility, and you don't have the risk of the variation of the price of barrel oil. So it does create the arbitrage that is being asked by this question. And those are alternatives. I was surprised. I learned about that one 2 years ago. I haven't engaged it yet, but I have a buddy that has. The guy that actually got me into alternative investments has done 2 of those types of investments. So I just want you to know enough to say there are things you might not know that you thought you knew everything. That would be amazing if you actually took some time to dig in. There's so much I don't know, but I'm still exploring and I'm looking, and I've had some great success. I've had some bad success one time. And let me tell you what to stay away from when considering alternative investments. Do not get involved in startup entities. those are just problematic. It's like a crapshoot that you'll win. Most of the time you're going to lose. So I've only had one loser, and it's a startup. But everything else for me has been a pretty big winner. Any other questions, Fred?
Yeah, Bill did correct that question to say the 80% deduction, but I know you already picked up on it instead of 80% discount. What's Bill's also asking about your thoughts on opportunity zones. Have you done much with those?
Yeah, so this gas and oil deal, they positioned it in an opportunity zone, and so that created special additional deductibility that wouldn't have been possible if it hadn't been in an opportunity zone. And basically, under some of the rules that applied under the Trump era, they identified opportunity zones for gas and oil production. That if done in those particular areas, there was some additional incentive to the profit possibilities that existed from those for those developers that develop such opportunities in those areas. So again, something I wouldn't have known had I not been involved, but there's just so much to explore in terms of that.
Yeah, finding those opportunity zones to deal direct versus a fund right now is kind of tough. The inventory is kind of low, but it does create a nice opportunity. Curtis, couple other quick ones here. Craig Keeper wants to know how much is there a discount for the members on Thrive, attending Thrive?
Yeah, so we're in the middle of a 5-part series. Obviously, we've not been able to get live yet for a 2-day class like we've been doing for years. So I decided to do a 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, 5.0. And our next class is 3.0, and it's in August, which I'll talk about at the end of my presentation today. And we've actually created a bundle pack for that. So if you attended one class, it was $298 for 3 hours online. And if you came to a second class, but you only wanted to buy the class, it was 25% less. But we bundled all 5 classes to $999. And that was a pretty good discount if you do the math. And if you didn't attend 1.0 and 2.0, and you only can attend 3.0 now, everyone that subscribes to that will get all the recordings and all the handouts for all 5 sessions so that you can catch up on what you might have missed. We even have some folks that don't plan to attend live any of those webinars. They just want the recordings. So thriveu.net, thrive the letter u.net, you can go out and see the bundle pack. But we'll talk about more of that at the end if you guys would like.
And probably I would imagine you'll talk a little bit about your RNG product too and availability.
Yeah. So Retirement Next Gen, which is something I'm getting ready to get into only to demonstrate the power of these dynamics that we're describing here. If you attend any one of our ThriveU classes, which we've never done before, we drop the normal fee down from $199 a month down to $130. And if you are on this call for Tax Planning Center, you automatically get $20 a month discount to $179. So if you don't want to attend the classes, but you're interested in the software, you'll get the discount for the tax center automatically if you tell us that you're part of the tax center. So there are some discounted options if you like what you see. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, let's drop in one more, and I think we're caught up. Enya Canoe, one of our members, is asking about if you have any options on pre-IPOs. I did a firm I was with did a lot of late stage pre-IPO, not startup, right? But they bundled together, put tranches around some late stage pre-IPO. It was a really the biggest roller coaster I ever saw. Have you ever done much with those?
I haven't. I've had zero experience in that, and I think again you got to be really careful. Could be a lot of hair, and it's kind of winners and losers, but there's probably more losers than winners. Now I don't say that with education. I say that based on opinion and perspective. So you have to kind of sort that out for yourself.
Great. Okay, well that gets us caught up at the moment. So go ahead and carry on, and we'll see what we collect by the time we get to the end here.
All right, great. And I'm in a place not with my big timers to kind of keep me on track. I thought maybe I'd be short today, given the circumstances.
You've got about 20 minutes, Curtis. So you're doing good.
Okay, good. Okay, so I just want to introduce this to you before I get into RNG, and that is we created something unique called the Retirement Income Dashboard. And in the dashboard, it was a revelation I had from a flight that I had one day for Strategic Coach from a little bitty puddle jumper between Burlington, Iowa, where I live, and Chicago, where my strategic coach class was going to be. And on that particular April morning, it was a 40-mile-an-hour ground wind with a misty rain. And when that King Air took off, 40-mile-an-hour ground wind, you can imagine it was shaking like crazy. Talk to Vince DeDona. I don't know if he's here today or not, but he's actually had the experience of flying in that particular plane to Chicago, and he has the story behind it. But on that particular day, 20 minutes into the flight, remember this thing flies 10,000 feet because it's a single prop plane, only 8 seats in the plane. I was the single sole flyer at 6 a.m. that morning to Chicago. And 20 minutes into the flight, it wasn't any better than when we took off. You couldn't see out because we were flying in the soup. It was a terrible ride. And there were 2 young pilots, I'd say in their late 20s, early 30s, flying this thing. And I fly every week. I'm not afraid to fly, but this was not a pleasant flight. And I was gripping with all my might the handles on the side of my chair. While I'm doing that, trying to concentrate not to get sick, all of a sudden I heard this loud yelp from the cockpit, these 2 young guys. And when I opened my eyes in startlement, I saw that they were beaming their phones at one another, and they were dropping their phones down, and one was really having fun making fun of the other one. And I deduced from what I could see, though they startled me when they did that they were playing a game, somehow beaming their phones at one another while having the plane on autopilot in this turbulent moment where I couldn't see out the window and I hated the ride. And since there was nobody else in the plane, I was compelled to shout out to them. I said, "Hey, what are you doing up there? Can't see out the window. It's a terrible ride, and you guys are playing games?" I startled them. They looked at each other and they looked at me. They looked at each other and they looked at me, and they laughed at me. Oh man, I wanted to punch their lights out. I couldn't wait to get on the ground in Chicago. I went to strategic coach. The 3rd break of the day after lunch, I'm looking out the windows in that, I think, 4th floor office building that Dan Sullivan has out there. I looked at the trees and the wind swirled, and it's getting dark, and I go, shoot, I got to fly back home on that plane. And all of a sudden, I had the biggest epiphany of my life. Imagine that instead of me flying to Burlington on that plane, imagine it was me without knowledge, as I know as a financial advisor, trying to navigate retirement as a consumer, where they can't see out the windows and the ride is bumpy, and all the guy can do behind the cockpit is say, sit back and relax, it'll be just fine. And I thought to myself, see, what I failed to mention to you was what the pilot told me. A pilot looked at me and he said, "Now I'm going to ask you a question, sir. Do you know what being instrument rated is?" I said, "I do." And he says, "Well, do you see the gauges on my dashboard?" I said, "I do." And he says, "Well, based on this guy with a big southern drawl, based on what I see in the gauges in the dashboard, we ain't falling out of the sky. Ain't nothing running into us, and we ain't running into nothing. So just sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride." And of course, I wanted to punch him again. And I realized that is exactly what our clients feel like in retirement. And I said, you know what? I've got to build a dashboard to get a contrast, help clients know how safe or risky their beliefs are about how their portfolio is, their tax class of mixture of assets, and what their expectations are for lifestyle when they retire. And from all of that experience come what you see in front of you. And so there are 4 measurements pictorially. We started off with 12, and I go, too many. We need to make it as simple as possible. And so the first one just says, from start to end, do I run out? And you can see the green line and the red line. The red line is the representation of what would have happened based on all the assumptions, and they're setting the assumptions, had they gone the course they were planning to go. The green line is after all the testing and the advice we're getting ready to give, but yet we've not spoken products yet. All right, down to the right, we're also having a very direct and intentional conversation about withdrawal drag and safe withdrawal rates. And so you see that purple marker there. There's a system, there's a toggle in the system that lets you set that whatever you want. You can put it at 4, you can put it at 5. We believe in a 3% safe withdrawal drag. And you can see that we have massive improvements in the green line over the red line, even though you could argue the red line was not unsafe over time. And then the third one down in the left-hand corner is the reliability of income. We call it our ROI. And it says how much of the income is promise-based from secure income flows versus risk-based as a draw against that withdrawal rate against market-based assets, assets that risk in the market. And so the line represents how much of the income relative to the purple line, which is the total need inflated over time, grossed up to tax, how much of the income is promised versus risk. Now, this client was pretty good in the red line, even out of the gate, but we still improved it significantly. So we can quantify and qualify the value of the safety. While if you go to the net worth showing, we didn't sacrifice performance, we actually improved performance. And then finally, this whole discussion about not only do I want income, not only want to hold my assets dear to me, but I also want liquidity. And what they don't understand when they use traditional investment approaches and they take too risky of a withdrawal drag, how low of their discretionary liquidity they really have, because they've got to hold those assets hostage in order to create the performance. So their withdrawal rate isn't unsafe 2/3 of the way through the retirement. And when I free the hostages and give them higher distribution rates, I use less dollars for income with income guarantees. I have more opportunity for growth and taking risks with a much lower withdrawal drag. And that creates for me all the things I want, including more spendable liquidity because I free the hostages.
Well, thank you, Curtis. I hope on behalf of the center and all our team members here at the center, as well as the members, I hope you enjoyed that, got some good information out of it. That's a really small taste of the type of things that our faculty provide to our members. If you want a bigger piece of that, you want to be able to come back with 15 ideas and a notepad on who you're going to go give that idea to first and really increase your practice revenue, come to this academy. It is, again, the 11th through the 13th. There is a few seats left. You should by now have your email, so check it right when you get off this, but I want to extend an offer to you. So grab that if you can. It runs from 8 to 5 day one, and 8 to day one and day two, and then 8 to 4 on day three. Easy to get to Vegas from anywhere in the U.S. In fact, we have somebody coming all the way in from Guam. So if you think you have a long flight, you're probably not the longest traveler. Go to our register or our website. You can go to www.yourctsr.com. There'll also be a link in the email with the offer we're sending to you. Current pricing is valid through the 30th, so you want to move on this quick. But as soon as we sell off the last 7 seats, we're pretty much done with that part of it because we've only got so much room. For more information, give us a call at 877-258-2837. If you just have questions about the event itself or questions about membership, give us a call. We'd be happy to explain a little bit more to you. You're also going to receive a brochure about us, so go ahead and click through that when you get a chance. If you want to email us at thecenterteam@yourctsr.com. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, week, and year, and we'd like to be part of making you better at what you do. So check the things out we sent you, and hopefully we'll see you in Vegas. Take care.